Hello and welcome to Biology 40C. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about the digestive system. The digestive system is found in chapters 23 and 24 of your textbook, and you'll also find required work in module 1 of our online course. The digestive system is used to break down foods into the nutrients that we need to maintain and build our body. Foods are broken down in preparation for absorption into the blood and transport around the body. Digestion begins in the mouth, where saliva blends food into a liquid that is easy to swallow. Chewing or mastication helps to break up that food. And enzymes, for example, enzymes like the enzyme amylase, are added to break down, to start the breakdown of macromolecules into molecules that your body can absorb. Amylase, for example, is an enzyme that breaks down starch. You'll probably remember from biology 1A and 1B that starch is the way that plants store glucose. Plants store glucose as starch. Starchy foods include things like potatoes and also these Ritz crackers. Amylase is an enzyme that will break starch down into its component, in this case, glucose dimers, which are maltose. Maltose tastes sweet. As we go through Anatomy and Physiology 40C, I'm going to have a focus on disease. So as you learn the anatomy and physiology, you'll also learn about the diseases that are associated with the various anatomical parts of the body. And so one of the first diseases here associated with the mouth and chewing and saliva is Sjögren's syndrome. This is autoimmune destruction of the salivary glands. The salivary glands are found here and here. In the head, they secrete saliva, including enzymes, into the mouth and start the digestive process. Autoimmune destruction of these glands is a rather painful condition because your body can no longer produce saliva and it becomes difficult to swallow. After the oral cavity, the esophagus is the muscular wall that transports material from the mouth down into the stomach. The esophagus is lined with a mucosa or mucosal layer and a submucosal layer, and it's a very strong structure. The mucosal layer is there to provide physical protection from abrasion caused by foods. We're looking at a mucosal layer, here a lamina propria underneath the mucosal layer, and then a muscular a layer consisting of smooth muscle cells. These smooth muscle cells can contract in a rhythmic fashion that is called peristalsis and can move the food down the esophagus and into the stomach. The esophagus, whilst it does have provide protection from physical damage caused by food, it's not a very strong protection against acids and the acid environment of the stomach. So it's worth keeping that in mind as we go further along. Food as it is digested and swallowed is called a bolus. And the smooth muscle lining the esophagus is contracting in a rhythmic fashion, which pushes the bolus down towards the stomach by squeezing it. It's rhythmic contractions squeeze the bolus of food down to the stomach. Once the food exits the esophagus through the esophageal sphincter, here this is a small muscular structure that can close off the stomach from the esophagus. The food enters the stomach. In the stomach, it's a very specialized environment. The stomach contains acid that keeps its pH in the range of about 1.5 to 3.5. The stomach is an extremely muscular structure. It's got 3 different layers of muscle that squeeze in opposing and cross different directions that will squeeze the food, rhythmically squeeze the food and crush it. As that food gets crushed, it is turned into a semi-liquid mass that is called chyme. And at the bottom of the stomach is another sphincter, another muscular structure that closes off. And that muscular structure there at the bottom of the stomach that can close off much like my hand is closing here. As an illustration, that pyloric sphincter will open and allow chyme to be released into the small intestine. Now, it's important to note that the stomach is protected by a very thick coat of mucus that is secreted onto the surface of the stomach. That mucus protects the stomach from being digested by this very acidic environment. The acid is being produced by cells within the stomach wall. One of the most common medications that you will see prescribed for acid reflux or heartburn are chemicals like this, or pharmaceuticals like this, Prilosec or Zantac. These act to reduce the secretion of acid in the stomach. And certain foods, particularly high-fat foods or high-starch foods, can trigger overproduction of stomach acid, and that overproduction can be reduced using pharmaceuticals like Prilosec or Zantac. Prilosec's active ingredient is omeprazole. Here is a closer look, a sort of a cutaway diagram, looking at the lower esophagus here, where there's this muscular structure around the esophageal sphincter, and then the muscle layers over the stomach. The stomach itself, within the stomach, are these ridges or rugae, but then there is a circular muscular layer, an oblique muscular layer, and a longitudinal muscular layer, all at slightly different angles. These are there to squeeze the stomach and crush the food as food is turned into chyme, and the acid is digesting food and also killing off any invading organisms. Then the food can be released from the stomach into the small intestines via the pyloric sphincter. This is the pyloric canal and pyloric atrium. And this is the muscular structure that pinches off and controls the flow of chyme from the stomach into the small intestine. Now, if we take a microscopic look at the stomach's mucosa, you can see that it has a simple columnar epithelial structure. So these are cells here. These tiny little squares are cells. They have a rich blood supply here at the bottom. This is the smooth muscle layer at the lowest part, furthest away from the interior of the stomach, and up here is where the mucus is going to be secreted. The mucus is going to be secreted by cells here, mucus-producing cells within these ridges here, these rugae that line the stomach. And as cells grow and divide, they'll move up here and up to the top of the ridges towards the lumen or inside of the stomach. And cells, some cells, specialized cells here lining the stomach, will be secreting mucus, which will also be moved up and secreted out to the outside of the stomach. And okay, Let's go even closer. Now we're looking in just at one of these ridges, or the sides of one of these ridges, if you like. Here are mucosal epithelial cells, and then the neck of the rugae here. And there are, down beneath that, in the crypts, there are gastric glands, parietal cells that are secreting acid, G cells that produce hormones that are going to regulate the function of the stomach, particularly the acid release, keeping that pH in that very narrow range, and chief cells that are going to be secreting a digestive enzyme called pepsinogen, which is going to cleave protein into small peptides that can be further digested in the small intestines. And you also have specialized mucus-producing cells here in the mucal epithelial cells. One of the functions of the parietal cells is to secrete acid. Those are hydrogen ions, along with chloride ions, which balances the charge. So that is the release of strong hydrochloric acid from the inside of cells to the outside of the cells. So that hydrochloric acid is being secreted here into the lumen of the gastric gland and ultimately up into the lumen of the stomach. Chloride is being transported across here, and bicarbonate is being used to produce the hydrogen ion. So you're getting this transport of hydrogen ions with co-transport of chloride. Basically, that means you're releasing hydrochloric acid by turning bicarbonate from the blood into hydrochloric acid. There's an enzyme involved in this process called carbonic anhydrase. It's taking carbon dioxide and water, turning it into bicarbonate, and then that bicarbonate is dissociating, turning into hydrogen ions and chloride ions. So the hydrochloric acid can be released inside of the lumen of the stomach. Okay. One of the more important factors that is associated with our stomach is that it's highly innervated. There is a nerve with many branches called the vagus nerve that goes from your stomach all the way up to your brain, and in combination with sensory signals tell your stomach to get ready for food. So you can start to secrete the acid that you need to digest the food. That's triggered by sight, smell, taste, or even just thinking about food, signals the vagus nerve to prepare the stomach for the arrival of food. But there are signals going the other way as well. As the stomach becomes full, nervous system signals detect the stretch on the stomach lining, and the nerves know that the stomach is full, and that'll send a signal back up to the brain, which in part is one of the signals which says, okay, now is time to stop eating. Most people are pretty aware of the sense of fullness when they're eating. A really good rule of thumb is to stop eating when you're about 80% full. At the same time, chief cells, parietal cells, nuclear cells, G cells are producing hormones that will also be secreted into the blood and will also talk to the brain, providing signals of satiety. That means you've had enough. Had enough to eat. Where these signals can become confused is with signals, for example, from artificial sugars, which may trigger glucose receptors and give the sense that the body has ingested more glucose than it really actually has. So there are all kinds of different complexities to this signaling process, and a lot of it starts here in the stomach. And a lot of it is talking by the vagus nerve, but also hormones are being secreted into the blood, which also goes back and talks to the brain. A lot of signals here regulating food intakes. One of the diseases, among the most common diseases of the stomach, is gastrointestinal reflux, or GERD. Gastrointestinal reflux occurs when the sphincter here at the top of the stomach, the pyloric sphincter, is unable to close completely. And when that happens, acid can reflux or flow back up into the esophagus. Now, the esophagus does not have the same mucus lining, the same protection that the stomach has, and that can cause burning around the sphincter. And this is looking down at the sphincter from above, and this is where acid has burnt away a layer of cells. And this is a precancerous condition called Barrett's esophagus, where the damage from gastrointestinal reflux is very pronounced. In patients, this can cause heartburn, chest pain. If you have any chest pain, don't assume that it's GERD. Definitely get it checked out first. It may not be just gastrointestinal reflux. Sometimes it can be a heart attack. But if you do have chest pain, go and get that checked out. But commonly, gastrointestinal reflux is caused by acid fluxing back up through the pyloric sphincter. Acid reflux medications can inhibit the release of hydrochloric acid. One of the hormones that I was talking about earlier is called gastrin. It regulates the amount of hydrochloric acid released into the stomach. It is produced by G cells. G cells is kind of easy to remember. G cells produce gastrin, and it promotes the release of histamine, and histamine boosts hydrochloric acid secretion through H2 receptors. Now, there's a slightly different receptor from histaminic receptors that might cause allergies and asthma, but they're in the same family. So Zantac, this medication Zantac, can block histamine action by blocking the function of H2 receptors, reducing acid production, even if gastrin levels are quite high. When the stomach is not functioning correctly, occasionally there can become damage to the lining of the stomach, and digestion through that protective mucosal layer. That is often associated with an infection from a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori can live in the cells of the stomach lining and reduce their function, reduce their production of mucus. And when that happens, the mucosal lining can be eaten away over time. And when the mucosal layer is destroyed or damaged, then the acid can start to damage the stomach lining. And this can result in something called a peptic ulcer. If you are suffering from a peptic ulcer, it's a very painful condition. It can result in nausea, vomiting, and dark stool because of bleeding. So blood bleeding from the vasculature that's supporting the stomach, blood can leak into the stomach. And then as that blood goes through the gastrointestinal tract, it goes from red to black as it oxidizes, and that'll show up as blood or dark, either red or black stool. A peptic ulcer can also make you feel bloated, and a peptic ulcer often results in weight loss because of the pain associated with eating. The intestines the next place where the chyme is released from the stomach into the small intestines, and then ultimately into the large intestine, the ascending, transverse, and descending colon. But these are the small intestines here in the middle. So food goes from the stomach into the small intestines. The small intestines are fascinating because they are one of the places where most of your nutrition absorption occurs. So in the small intestines, enzymes are secreted from supporting organs like the bile and the pancreas. And these enzymes are going to help to digest the food. The pancreas also secretes a large amount of bicarbonate to neutralize the hydrochloric acid that was in the stomach. So now the pH is going to return to normal, and at these normal pHs, more close to pH 7, enzymes can function better, and enzymes can break down the food and those foods can then be absorbed into the body. Now, if you look closer at the structure of the lining of the intestines, you will see that there are villi, and again, these are cells lining each villi here. Each one of these is a cell, and there's vasculature here, or capillary, vein, artery, and vein, along with a lymphatic vessel here, a lacteal duct. All three. So you've got blood supply coming in, supplying oxygen to the cells, and blood flow going out, and a lacteal duct. So this is the structure of the villi with all the cells lining the villi, little green cells or cells that produce mucus. And then on each one of these cells here, each one of these tiny little squares, you can see each cell itself has little microvilli. And these little microvilli are on top of the villi. And so overall, the intestines have a really huge surface area, approximately the size of half a tennis court, approximately, when you lay it all out end on end. So let's take a look back here. And now we're going to take one of these villi and take a closer look at the villi. So that would be one of these villi here. Would have cells lining the villi all the way up and all the way down. There's the blood supply. In this case, the red blood, oxygenated blood is coming in, and then nutrients are being transported across into the blood, and that's going to exit here and go past the liver, and then ultimately go and deliver these nutrients to the rest of your body. Now, only certain nutrients can be absorbed from the food from the breakdown here. And the foods that can be absorbed by simple diffusion or facilitated diffusion are things like very short chain fatty acids. That's not large fatty acids, but very short chain fatty acids. Amino acids. So when you break down a protein, you break it down into its component parts, its monomeric parts. That's amino acids. Amino acids can be absorbed. Proteins cannot be absorbed. They have to be broken down by enzymes. So protein has to be broken down by enzymes into amino acids before you can absorb it. That's why it really doesn't matter what protein you eat after your workout. They're all going to be broken down into amino acids before they can be absorbed. And then simple sugars like glucose, fructose can be fairly readily absorbed into the blood directly. Foods that can't be absorbed directly include very large fats, which is most of the fats that we eat need to be broken down. And the long-chain fatty acids can't be absorbed directly into the blood. So short-chain fatty acids can be, but long-chain fatty acids, which is most of the fats that you eat, they cannot be broken down and absorbed directly into the blood. So those fats are coated with bile salts and become particles called chylomicrons. There's a very big, large balls of fat, and they do not enter the blood. They enter the lymphatic system, the lacteal. So be a lacteal here, and then this will enter the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system is a passive system. It's not like blood which is being pumped by the heart. The lymphatic system is sort of pumped by movement. And so fats are pumped by just body movements around the body, and ultimately these chylomicrons will enter the bloodstream. After that, foods that are not digested and absorbed in the intestines, in the small intestines, will exit and enter into the large intestine, the colon. And the colon has a really important function. The colon absorbs excess water from any of that indigestible material. And also the indigestible material is the home to what is called your gastrointestinal microbiome. These are bacteria that live with us, live in your colon. Here, ascending, transverse, descending colon. They live here in your colon, and then they help digest some of the material that your body otherwise couldn't digest. And that material includes things like fiber. So you should be eating at least 30 grams of fiber a day. And much of that material you can't absorb. However, your microbes in your microbiome will feed off that. And those microbes have many different functions. One of those functions is to protect you from invading organisms. So you really want to support your microbiome just to prevent you from infections. In addition, they can extract some energy, break down fiber, and provide you with additional energy. And in addition to that, your microbiome, the cells of your microbiome, these microbes that live in your colon, produce signaling molecules that boost your immune system. They can actually help reduce risk for many diseases, including obesity. And there's really good evidence that these microbes, different types of these microbes, predispose you to different kinds of disease if you don't have them. So the idea is to have a very, very large and diverse set of microbes here. And by having a very large set of microbes, a very diverse set of microbes, you get the best possible protection from infection, and also you get the best possible set of molecules produced by those cells that can help prevent chronic disease like diabetes, chronic disease, diseases like cardiovascular disease, and chronic diseases like heart attacks, strokes, and other kinds of disease, including obesity. So, things that can go wrong. Colorectal cancer is a disease that can occur in the colon. This is where the cells here are exposed to dangerous chemicals, probably also a very low level of microbiome activity, and through a low fiber diet, and with dietary factors like a diet high in red meat, a diet high in processed meat, a diet high in alcohol, it's pro-inflammatory. So you get a lot of inflammation throughout the colon. And then inflammation throughout the colon can predispose the cells of the colon to becoming cancerous. It can also predispose to diseases like Crohn's disease. It can predispose to diseases like ulcerative colitis. So there's an increased risk of those kinds of pro-inflammatory diseases, cancer, inflammatory bowel diseases in the colon, if there is a low fiber diet, or if you're exposed to high levels of processed meats, alcohol, and certain other chemical agents that damage the colon. So currently, our best practice to prevent colorectal cancer is early screening. If your family has a history of colorectal cancer, it is a good idea to get a colorectal screening from a fairly early age. Other than that, most people should get colorectal screening at age 50. One of the diseases that I was talking about there just a moment ago is the inflammatory bowel disease. There's areas of inflammation that are causing damage to the different parts of the colon. When the inflammation is spread throughout the colon, that's typically a sign of Crohn's disease. When the damage or inflammation is restricted to the descending colon, that's typically a sign of ulcerative colitis. There are very effective treatments that reduce the function of the immune system. And it's really worth noting that your immune system throughout your intestines, your small intestines, and your large intestine it's a massive immune system organ. Why is it a massive immune system organ? This is because this is where invading microorganisms will try to invade your body. So there are really only a couple of different locations that are easily accessible to pathogenic microbes. One is your lungs, where you breathe in viral or other kinds of pathogens, and the other is that where microbes can try to invade the human body is through the digestive tract. the skin is a pretty good barrier, but of course, if you get a cut on your skin, then that becomes a site where invading organisms can try to get into your body as well. One of the more common, it's not really a disease, but one of the more common nutrition problems that people have is lactose intolerance. Everybody is born with enzymes, an enzyme called lactase, which allows you to digest a sugar that is present in breast milk, and that sugar is lactose. And lactose is a dimeric molecule composed of one glucose molecule and one galactose molecule linked together. And you need an enzyme to break this bond between glucose and galactose. And that enzyme is called lactase. It will break glucose and galactose. All babies have this, but in some people, lactase, the enzyme, is lost as we get older. And that's thought to be from a evolutionary standpoint in societies where there was just very little access to milk products, dairy products. And so this is just an enzyme that's not of any use in societies where there was very little milk or milk dairy products that were available. So the production of that enzyme is reduced. It's not zero, but it's reduced as people get older. And as a result, if you are lactose intolerant and you digest lactose as an adult, but you have no lactase enzyme, then the bacteria in your gut will quite happily ferment this sugar. The bacteria of your microbiome will take that sugar and ferment it. And what they tend to do is produce acid, and they tend to produce gas, and this will cause irritation. For a lactose intolerant person, this is uncomfortable, can produce symptoms like diarrhea, bloating, gas after eating any kind of dairy product. Current advice, nutrition advice, is to not completely avoid all dairy products because this is really more irritating at a low level for most people. So some of these, some of this can be tolerated. However, it's really on a case-by-case basis, and you should do what you feel most comfortable with. And just be aware that this is the process here, that foods that contain lactose may cause irritation. Another disease that occurs in the intestines is celiac disease. And this is an inflammatory response, an immune response found in the cells, white blood cells in your small intestine that recognize the molecule gluten, which is a type of fiber found in breads, found in wheat. And it recognizes that and triggers an immune response. If you are suffering from celiac disease, this is a very serious condition. You must not eat gluten because if you do eat gluten, the immune system will attack the wall, the lining of the gut, of the intestines, and destroy the villi, making it very hard to absorb food. So this is a really serious condition. Celiac disease is a very serious condition, and you must avoid all gluten. Now, there's also another condition that some people suffer from, which is a sort of gluten intolerance. What that is unrelated to this. That is most likely ingesting gluten feeds some microbes in the microbiome that cause discomfort for certain people and cause them to steer away from foods that are high in gluten. This is really a personal choice. There's not really a lot of physical damage that occurs in people who are gluten intolerant. However, celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, an immune disease. It's not autoimmune, but it's an immune disease. Very serious. Must avoid all gluten.